Righty ho ladies, we are going straight into part 2. So this scenario was sent in by one of our listeners. Trigger warning, there is non-consensual content in this scenario. So we will try and help our sister as best as we can. So yeah, let's continue. I divorced a sexual predator who prays 5 times a day. What a title.
Oh no.
Assalamu alaikum sisters, Callie and Harda. Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam, darling.
I love hearing the Oversharers podcast on my drives. Your voices are so lovely, mashallah, and you two are filled with a lot of compassion. I felt drawn to share my story.
So sweetheart.
I love you. Please be warned that this is actually going to be quite long, but it is context heavy. I'm writing my story from a Muslim country in Southeast Asia, and it's up to you whether or not you want to provide advice to this. I just want to share my experience because it's a very cautionary tale for Muslim sisters worldwide. And I think that's one of the reasons why we created this podcast. I went to a religious international school. By religious, I mean if you are caught talking to a boy, your teachers will keep an eye on you. And if you get caught in a room with a boy, then you're getting called to a disciplinary room. I met a boy at this school. We lost contact when we entered college, but 6 years ago, I found out that my ex-roommate was friends with his sister. I reached out to her to tell her that I was interested in getting his number to get back in touch. I got it and we talked about meeting again finally. Here's the first red flag, but I ignored it. He had an open house for Eid and I went to visit. All his relatives kept pointing to this other girl who was also there, saying to him, "Hey, isn't that your girlfriend?" He kept saying that they were just friends, and she looked at me with these really leery eyes. I should have known that apparently he was giving false promises to multiple other girls, and that this girl happened to be the one his relatives had been meeting in the past months.
Oh dear.
Then he called me out to a first date, and our first date was at McDonald's. Oh my god.
That was terrible.
So
anyway, continue.
We've been there. After dinner, we sat in the car and he essentially trauma dumped by sharing that he was supposed to be getting married to someone he met in college, but she married someone else. Because of her, he fell into depression to the point where he shut himself at home for 2 whole years. Guys, trigger warning, this is quite disgusting. So this part is going to be about child pornography. The details were vague, but he also brought up that he was consuming, trigger warning, child pornography during this time. I felt very uncomfortable, but I also felt sympathy. Was he that broken, or was I broken for feeling bad for someone who consumed actually sickening content?
Sympathy.
That night was when the second red flag came falling down on me. Babes, I
This
don't
is
know
not
why
a red flag.
This is crimson. This is run away. This is send him to jail.
No, this doesn't even warrant flags. This is leave. Leave and do not turn back.
Okay. He insisted on driving my car around the city. We drove to McDonald's using our own cars. Please be warned, there is non-consensual content following this situation. When we were on the road, he coerced me into giving him oral. He kept bringing up how I came to his mind when he was depressed and that he would not go back to McDonald's if I didn't at least give him one. Unsure how to say no, I asked him, "Isn't it too early for this? Shouldn't we wait for marriage or at least some kind of agreement for a relationship? Astaghfirullah." And he answered with, "Are you slut-shaming me?"
How? That's gaslighting.
He forced her into it, essentially.
And he said, "Are you such?" This guy's a narcissist. From when he said he was trauma dumping on the first bloody date, I knew he was a narcissist. Anyway, continue.
I don't think he realised it was non-consensual, but I had to agree because I wanted to get home. Do you know how many people that happens to? Anyway, we'll talk about this after. At that rate, I was going to arrive home at 2 a.m. For some reason, I was really blinded at that time, and we kept going for dates, and he coerced me to meet his relatives. I knew about being one of the few girls he talks to because he does not have any male friends. So I wanted him to be more honest about it rather than stringing anyone along. Suddenly, after months of meeting up, he told me that he broke off with all the other girls and asked me to marry him. At that point, I figured that because I already met his relatives, I thought, sure, this would be serious. At the time, I had started a new job as a reporter, and he was still completing his studies. He was held back by 2 years because of his depression. I don't feel sorry for this man. However, he was a man who prays 5 times a day. Even if he actually spent his 20s meeting girls, I'm not sure what he does with them. We got married early 2018. It was a simple and sweet wedding. I cried when he completed the act. I'm assuming that's nikah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I cried. I thought they were tears of joy, and maybe it was because I never thought a man would actually say act with my name. But I picked the lowest men to do so. When we first agreed to getting married, I told him I didn't want a child before we were financially stable. With him still studying and I only started my job, I wanted him to at least get a job first. In the meantime, we were living in my parents' home while my parents lived overseas. Prior to the wedding, I'd been living in a house alone when my parents weren't around. Since I started a job, I've been paying for the electricity, water and bills. Oh my god, this is just getting worse. Not even 1 month into our wedding, he called me up from the dorms to say I want a child as soon as possible. I cried on the other side of the phone. I cried because I thought we already established an understanding. He insisted I take off birth control and we leave it to Allah. I went off for 4 months and returned to taking birth control because I was getting stressed and scared because he still had not done or completed his studies. By 2019, my patience was beginning to thin. My parents offered us an apartment to live in, which we previously rented out by relatives, at which we would start our own lives together. When I brought the idea up to him, he was upset and said instead we should just move into my parents' place so we don't have to pay for anything. This man! I understand the communal living life is very traditional and common practice among Asian families, but it was not something I could live with. I had been living alone for at least 5 years at this point, and I liked my space. Naturally, I wanted to move into a place where I could be alone with my own husband safely as well. Eventually, he gave in to at least paying for the internet at the new place. However, we ended up never moving in. At some point, I stopped sleeping in the same room as him because I would really get emotional after intercourse. I wanted to talk and he would just sleep. I wanted emotional connection, but to him it was just touch and go. I would sleep in a living room so I could leave for work easily while he slept in our bedroom. Things began to crumble when he began to intern at an old school as a teacher.
Oh my god.
He said the kids will tell him they miss him over the weekends, and then he would ask another group if they missed him too. As someone who knew about his background, I was disgusted by the idea of him forcing children to tell him they missed him. I want to report this man to the police. Physical content warning. He told me that he received a lot of attention from female students, and one even gave him a bar of chocolate. When I got home that day, he offered the bar of chocolate, which he had already taken 1 bite of, and asked me if offering the bar of chocolate was cute. I looked at the chocolate and said it wasn't cute of him to do so, and within a split second he slapped me. He told me I was supposed to say yes. We continued to sleep apart until one day during dinner I asked him if he wanted to go back to working out. He said he was happy with his body, but he told me that I scammed him into thinking my breasts were larger than they actually were. No, it's at this point we weren't sleeping with each other or had any sexual relations, let alone touch, for at least 5 months. I had no desire for a husband who only wanted sex and no conversation with him. When I told my mum about him slapping me and telling me that my body was not attractive, my mum tried to tell me to have sabr and asked me why it took so long to tell that he slapped me. It happened weeks ago at this point, she said. That was only the time that it happened, right? Honestly, I understand where it came from, but it made me feel extremely lonely. Oh. Late 2019, my parents had plans to go to Switzerland and asked me. They said if I wanted to join, we had to pay our own due, and my husband said that he did not want to join because he does not have the money. I wanted to go because I like travelling once per year. When my parents realised that we were having troubles, they insisted on paying for his part of the trip so we could try and reconcile during the trip. At the end of the day, we could not reconcile, and when the lockdown happened, he essentially moved back to his parents' place. We lived separately, though still husband and wife on paper, until July 2020, when we finalised our mutual divorce. Alhamdulillah.
Oh.
I wondered why it was so easy, because he typically objected to my decisions, but it turns out he brought another girl home during the same week that we went to, I think she means Sharia court, for their divorce. Among the reasons I listed for our divorce was that he did not provide any nafaqah to me throughout our marriage, and that we were not compatible. I did not disclose any emotional abuse I experienced because there were many little things that built up my resentment at this point. However, I also knew that a lot of my family members would find it hard to believe me. To this day, I still get some of my issues with him dismissed. He was a man who prayed 5 times, but he was a man who did not have the foundations of a good husband. I loved his family, and that was probably one of the reasons why I was drawn to marrying him. But at the end of it, it was really not worth the trouble, and alhamdulillah, I am happier now. Funnily enough, I have a more halal relationship with my current partner, who's yet to convert to Islam. Please make dua for us. I see the makings of a better Muslim man in him. This man needs to be reported to the police. Wallahi, he needs to be in jail. That's disgusting. And the fact that he's even exposed to working with children is giving me anxiety.
It's because he's never been reported.
And that's just sad.
He needs to be on a sex offender register.
He does. Okay. And you know, there's just so much to unpack here, and it's just such a traumatic experience for her as well. And I don't want to victim bash, because I feel like a lot of emotional abuse comes from the guilt that they make you feel. But I just think this happens to a lot of people in secret, and like the biggest issue is that one paragraph about when she spoke up and actually told her mum that he slapped her. Their favourite line to use is sabr. Like, why is patience your first thing? Why is not reacting to the fact that your daughter, if he's slapping her, you must think what else he's doing to her. Do you know what I mean? So, and the fact that just the emotional abuse from family, the lack of support, the fact that she's like in this situation that she can't get out of. It's like so many things piled on top of each other. So I understand why the first thing she does isn't go to the police or tell someone like what a sicko, because there's just so much, and
yeah,
she has no one.
She's got an unsupportive family. She doesn't sound like she's got any friends that she can confide in. She doesn't have anyone in her ear telling her the right thing to do. She's just stuck with this sick man, who's just basically emotionally and physically abusing her. Notwithstanding all the other things that he's doing as well. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's hard. And the thing is, like, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, we should have looked at the signs in the beginning, but he basically, like, he just sounds like a narcissist. The way he even went about pursuing her, like, the first thing he did when he was alone with her was trauma dump to make her feel
sorry for him.
Make her feel guilty. Even like the bit in the car when he would like coerced her to give him oral. Like, I feel like that happens a lot.
So often.
And women end up feeling like shame, or like feeling, you know what I mean? That
because you don't want to do it.
They don't want to do it, but they're essentially coerced, and then they're the ones that are slut shamed at the end of the day. Like, there's just so many things in here that are just reminiscent of things that are just happening in women's lives across the world. Like little bits of like this entire story happens to people on a daily basis, and people don't tend to speak up about it. They just feel rubbish, and it's like a traumatic thing that's happened to them. They can't really speak up about it because of fear of it's just because of fear of being judged. So you just live with it. Like, it's just, I don't know.
And the thing is, living with trauma, it's like you can forget about it. And I think growing up, we were raised in a, like, I get it, maybe our backgrounds are a bit different. Like, I could speak to my mum about things, but there's definitely things that I couldn't speak to my mum about. Like, in this situation, I don't think I could even approach that, I'll be honest.
No.
But it's like, you know, when you live with trauma, and it just, even if you hide it, it manifests in your head in different ways, and it affects you subconsciously in different ways. So like, for her, I just feel so bad for her. Like, she went through so much, and I'm happy because there's a good outcome here, that she left him.
Yeah, and that she's with someone who in a healthy relationship. But these things are never going to, she's never going to forget these things. And that's the saddest part.
Yeah. But I think one thing that's really good about it is the fact that she shared her story with us, because there's so many of you guys that are listening to this, and you might not, and you might be in a similar situation, or you might get caught up in a similar situation, and at least you know, like, there's people there that have experienced this, and you can at least catch it out and be like,
yeah, you can look out for the signs now, because you can basically learn from these stories that there are, like, they maneuver in a very specific tactical way. So if you're able to pick up on those signs early on, at least you know you have that knowledge and that reassurance that you know what they're doing. But a lot of girls are young, they're vulnerable, they've never been in relationships before. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just the need, obviously, to, and I don't want to bring it back to religion, because obviously not everyone is religious, and it's very easy for us to come on here and be like, well, you know what, you shouldn't be dating anyway, or you shouldn't be seeing a guy, and this is why Allah has brought up this hikmah. I get it, but it happens, and it's like,
ignore, exactly, you cannot ignore the fact that it happens.
Yeah.
And you cannot ignore that there are a bunch of people that need to be taught the healthy way to do this.
Exactly.
It's the same with, like, you know, for example, like, obviously you shouldn't be, like, having sex or whatever, but if I was to find out that my child was doing that, you would want to be able to teach them how to do it safely.
What? I just feel like we need that, though. Like, especially as women, we need to have a safe space to talk about things.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and we're not saying it has to be on a podcast, but what I'm trying to say is everyone needs an avenue or a space to be able to be heard.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what it is.
Regardless of what they're doing.
Like, no judgment, just so you can absorb what's happened, because life can be fucking shit sometimes.
Yeah.
And we need to deal with it.
How can you, like, turn away from that person that has come to you and basically, this is the issue with parents.
Yeah.
It's like, the first thing that they're going to say is just something off, like some sort of judgment or something that is, you know, like written in scripture. Do you know what I mean? Something that is just going to turn them away from you. There is no kind of, like, healthy conversation. There's no, like, do you know what I mean, like, evidence-based conversation that you're having with this child. You're literally just making them feel like shit, and it's the wrong way to do it.
I think it's, for me, I feel like it's the facade of, like, having your daughter married off, and she's, you know, she's married, she's happy, she's in a life, you don't want to break her home, the stigma of being a divorced woman, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you putting that before listening to your child who is actually going through something emotional? And I don't even want to, like, blame parents, because not all parents are like that, but I just think, actively speaking now in 2023, I was about to say two, I just think we need to develop those relationships with our mums, with our families, with our aunties, with our cousins,
with older sisters.
With older sisters, and just find a confidant that you can at least have conversations with, especially if you get married, and let's say, and you know, most marriages are happy, I'm obviously, we always talk about crazy stuff that happens in marriages, but most marriages are happy. But the ones that aren't, you need a space to be able to vocalize that.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know, man.
Anyway, this man, I don't even want to address him.
No, he's gone.
Ew,
he's out of her life.
And I really hope, like we always say, Allah reveals the bad person, and we just hope Allah reveals this man for who he is, and he doesn't get a job with
to the relevant authorities.
Yeah.
Within that country, within his home country.
Yeah, and he goes to jail or just something.
He's with someone else now. He's going to strike again. He's going to do the same thing to this new
someone
girl.
else. Yeah.
So he needs to be stopped. And I don't think it's even on a social matter. It's not a social matter anymore. It's literally like,
it's public awareness.
Yeah, there is a predator on the loose.
Literally.
If ever you're feeling as though something isn't right, or you have your intuition
that's what it was.
basically crying out for something, speak to someone. Honestly,
air it out,
just
talk about
speak to
it.
someone you trust and get someone else's opinion and someone else's perspective.
Because some people are very good at manipulating you, manipulating your emotions, what you do for them, how you treat them, how they make you feel, and they can spin stories to make you feel like, am I the problem? Like, okay, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done that. When really it's them, that's the issue. And I think you need to experience it to understand it. But I think the biggest lesson that we can give you right now is just really listen to your intuition, like Colton said, and learn the way narcissists operate.
Yeah, honestly, just read about narcissism, because it honestly, Harder, it opens your eyes. And another thing that I was going to say in you know, on the communication point is, like, when you're in a situation like this, you get so stuck in the situation that you don't see any avenues out. But as soon as you speak to someone else, it's like they basically give you some sort of like rational perspective. I don't know how to describe it, but you know, when you're in a situation and you're like, oh my god, like, this is just my life now.
Yeah.
And then you speak to someone about your life, and then they say to you, this isn't right.
Yeah, you need to move.
And then suddenly you switch on.
Yeah.
Like, you need to have someone that literally wakes you up. Like, I can't even stress this enough. You need to talk about your problems. In 2023, people need to actually speak about their problems. I don't even care.
And you know what? If you're ashamed that you don't want to tell your family or your friends, and there's also this notion that says, and I've been seeing this on TikTok recently, like, a way to keep a healthy marriage is to not talk about your problems. It's one of the big topics that are coming up, and I get that. I don't think you should talk about every single problem, but if you
need to be able to differentiate between small problems that you know you can handle and big problems that are way out of your control,
and they're affecting everything. Like, it's getting to the point where it's affecting your life. You're unhappy, you're depressed, you are literally you're nothing of the person that you used to be. If that is how you feel, then you need to go speak to someone. It doesn't need to be your family or friends. Go speak to a therapist.
Yeah, if you don't feel comfortable speaking to your family or friends, honestly, impartial person.
Do you know what I mean? And it will give you a different understanding. But the biggest thing for me right now, I just feel like, do not sit in silence. Do not feel like this is your life. And to end it off, number one, you deserve to be loved. If a husband is making you feel like you're ugly, or he's commenting on your body, or he's calling you fat, or you've changed, I'm sorry. Like, who are you? That's not a person that loves you. Secondly, no one should coerce you into having sex or have any sexual relations, even if it's your husband.
That's rape.
And you know what? Rape in marriage exists. And it's not a joke. It happens quite a lot, actually. And you need to be aware of that. So you should not be with someone that is making you feel like you owe them sex. I'm so sorry, you don't.
Do you know what I find so crazy is that marital rape was only criminalised in 1991 or 1990, something like one of those 2 years.
And it's even more scary because you're married to him, you share a life with him, and it's scary. You have, like, no man should own your body. Now, I get it. I don't even get anything. I'm so sorry. No one can force you to have sex. That's the honest truth. And if you're not having sex with someone, there is a reason. Because the natural way the body works is, if you love someone, you like them, and you have emotions for them, you naturally gravitate to want to, like, rip their clothes off. Do you know what I mean? But if there's a reason why you're not having sex, if you're actively going into a separate room to be away from him because you feel like shit, that's not a relationship that you should be in. At all.
Like, what the hell are you doing?
I saw this thing with this therapist. I see everything I see is on TikTok. Don't judge me. But the lady said a healthy relationship basically means having sex like 1 to 3 times a week.
Oh,
I know. Found that very interesting.
What? So it's unhealthy to go above 1 to 3?
No, it's very healthy if you do more. It's even more healthy. But anything after one time a week
is good.
Apparently, means that the cracks are showing. So if you haven't had sex with your partner in over 2 weeks, there's cracks apparently.
There's an issue.
There's an issue. There's a pending deal. But that, and it was a huge study done, by the way, in a lot, and it was like done for like a period of 10 years on a lot of couples. But the point I'm trying to make is, I mean, not everyone's got the same libido, and there's obviously different issues. But what I'm trying to say to you is, yeah, don't be forced into having sex. That's all I'm saying, especially if you're married and you know why you don't want to have sex. So yeah, we really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for sending in your scenarios. That was a really intense one.
Very eye-opening as well.
So thank you so much, and you guys let us know in the YouTube comments what you guys think, and if you've experienced something similar, and also what advice you would give for her moving forward, even though she has moved on. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and download the episode, and we shall see you next week, inshallah. Bye.